Imagine walking into a restaurant for a blind date, and all you have in your pocket is just $5. You're nervous, you're embarrassed, and you're praying no one notices. But what if I told you, someone at the next table was watching the whole thing, someone who could change your life forever? Stay with me until the end of this story, because it's going to touch your heart in a way you never expected. And before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories that will inspire you every single day. The restaurant smelled of roasted garlic and fresh bread, a place much fancier than she had ever dared to step into before. Clara smoothed her thrift store dress nervously, a soft pale blue fabric she had found for just $2 at a second-hand shop. It wasn't designer, it wasn't new, but she had washed it carefully the night before and ironed it with the little travel iron she borrowed from her neighbor. Tonight was her blind date. A friend from work had convinced her to finally try meeting someone instead of spending every evening alone in her tiny studio apartment. But what her friend didn't know was that Clara had only $5 to her name. That was all. Rent had taken almost everything, and the part-time hours she worked at the bookstore barely stretched far enough to cover groceries. Yet she didn't want to cancel, not after weeks of saying no to every opportunity. So she came, clutching her old handbag with a folded $5 bill tucked inside, hoping that maybe she could order a tea or something inexpensive while still looking like she belonged here. Her date hadn't arrived yet. She sat at a small round table near the corner, pretending to study the menu. Her stomach twisted with dread as her eyes scanned the list. Everything was expensive. The cheapest starter was already over $12, double what she could afford. She swallowed hard and folded the menu quickly before anyone saw the panic in her eyes. She told herself she could just order water, smile politely, and maybe make an excuse to leave early. At the next table sat a man in his mid-30s, though his posture and the quiet confidence in his eyes made him seem older. His name was Ethan, though Clara didn't know that yet. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a simple dark suit that fit him too perfectly to be off the rack. In front of him was a little girl about 6 years old, with curly chestnut hair tied in two playful ponytails. She giggled at the way he cut her pasta into tiny pieces, her small hands waving animatedly as she told him about something that had happened at school. Ethan smiled gently at her, listening with full attention, the kind of father who made his daughter feel like the most important person in the room. He didn't plan to eavesdrop, but from his seat, he had a clear view of the nervous young woman in the blue dress sitting just a table away. He had noticed her the moment she walked in, her cautious steps, the way she smoothed her dress as though afraid someone might judge her, and the flicker of hesitation when she opened the menu. Something about her reminded him of a time long ago, when money was tight and every dollar mattered. Clara checked her phone for the 10th time. Her date was 15 minutes late. She bit her lip, forcing herself not to look anxious. The waiter approached with a polite smile. "Good evening, miss. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to say a latte, or maybe a glass of wine like other women around her were ordering, but the price tags danced before her eyes. Finally, with a small, almost embarrassed smile, she whispered, "Just water, please." The waiter nodded and left, but Clara felt the sting of shame burn through her chest. She hoped no one around her had noticed. But Ethan had. He noticed everything. The way her fingers trembled slightly when she picked up the menu again, the way she sighed softly when she glanced toward the door. His daughter tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "Daddy, why does that lady look sad?" He looked at the girl in the blue dress again. She wasn't sad exactly, more like fragile, as though the wrong word might shatter her completely. He answered his daughter gently, "Maybe she's waiting for someone." The little girl tilted her head, still curious, then returned to her pasta. Minutes passed. Clara's date finally walked in, a tall man with slicked back hair and a flashy leather jacket. He didn't greet her with warmth, just a quick nod before sliding into the seat across from her. Clara tried to smile, introducing herself softly. But within seconds, she could tell this wasn't going to be the evening she had hoped for. He looked around distractedly, checking his phone, barely meeting her eyes. When the waiter came to take their orders, the man ordered a steak and a glass of wine without hesitation. Then the waiter turned to Clara. She froze, staring at the menu, heart racing. She whispered, "I'll just have water." The date raised an eyebrow. "You're not eating?" She forced a laugh, trying to sound casual. I'm not very hungry." He shrugged, uninterested, and returned to his phone. Clara's cheeks burned. She wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. She had imagined maybe a sweet conversation, maybe laughter. Instead, she sat silently while the man across from her scrolled through social media. Her stomach growled quietly, but she pressed her hands together in her lap, praying no one else had heard. At the next table, Ethan had heard. His jaw tightened slightly as he watched the scene unfold. Not because of pity, but because something inside him ached. He couldn't understand why someone would treat her with so little kindness. Clara tried to hold her composure. She told herself she could endure one awkward dinner, then escape back to her tiny apartment. But the reality of her situation pressed down like a weight she couldn't shake. She had only $5. And tonight, it felt like the whole world knew it. Ethan's daughter dropped her fork accidentally, and it clattered to the floor. Clara instinctively bent down and picked it up, handing it back with a soft smile. "Here you go, sweetheart." The little girl grinned. "Thank you." Clara smiled, a genuine smile this time, though fleeting. Ethan caught that moment, the kindness in her eyes, the way she spoke gently to his daughter, and something stirred inside him. When Clara's date excused himself to take a call outside, she sat alone, staring at her glass of water. She blinked quickly, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. This was supposed to be a chance to feel normal, to feel like she belonged in a world that had always felt just out of reach. Instead, she felt smaller than ever. And that was the moment Ethan made a decision. He didn't know why, and he couldn't explain it even to himself, but he couldn't just sit there and do nothing. Watching her fold in on herself, watching the quiet pain in her eyes, it felt wrong. He had been blessed with success, with wealth, with the chance to give his daughter a good life. But he hadn't forgotten the nights long ago when he too had counted pennies, when $5 had meant surviving until morning. He turned his gaze toward her table, watching as she brushed away an invisible crumb on the tablecloth, as though distracting herself from her own loneliness. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever, because the single dad at the next table had been watching all along. When Clara's date never returned from his phone call, she sat frozen, ashamed, and ready to leave. But before she could stand, Ethan's gentle voice broke the silence. "Excuse me, would you and I mind sharing a table? My daughter insists she wants to thank the kind lady who rescued her fork." Clara looked up, startled, into warm brown eyes filled with sincerity. His daughter beamed, tugging at her hand, pulling her closer. For the first time all night, Clara laughed softly. They shared stories, smiles, and a meal Ethan ordered without making her feel small. She forgot about the $5 in her bag. What mattered was the kindness in their company. That night, Clara realized something she'd never dared believe: sometimes, the family you dream of finds you when you least expect it. And before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more heart-touching stories.